All right, everyone's favorite topic, incrementality. So let's see, let's get started here. Perfect. So about me, I go by T-Hop. That started because there's other people at every company named Thomas. So I became T-Hop. There's a couple of people here in the Lyft office, or from Lyft, they'd probably enjoy that because that's where I used to work. So what we always like to do is start out with, looks like did not work on this, but what I always like to do is do a 2 truths and a lie. So there's 2 truths in here and 1 lie. I used to play professional water polo. I used to own a dog poop bag business, and incrementality testing is my favorite thing to do. All right, so I'm gonna need a show of hands here. Who thinks you have to pick out which one's the lie? I used to be a professional water polo player. Okay, we got 1, 2, 4, 5, okay. I used to be taller, maybe that'll help. I used to own a dog poop bag business. Got 1, wow. Come on, incrementality testing? All right, how about incrementality testing? All right, correct. I do not love incrementality testing. It's probably one of the most boring things to do as a marketer. All you want to do is spend money and grow, but the reality is we also need to be responsible and grow profitably. So this is more about me. So I used to be in gaming. That's how I got my career started in performance marketing. And so I worked at RockU, Rocket Games, and then Penn Interactive Games. And then I went over to rideshare and did passenger acquisition there at Lyft, and then moved on to MasterClass, where I am now. And all along the way, I did a bunch of consulting for various companies like dating, gaming, mindfulness, and various e-commerce products. So I've kind of got the run of the gamut in terms of all the different types of products to market, whether it's app or pixel-based marketing on mobile web as well as desktop web. So I want to just make sure like everyone's on the same page here. Some companies grow and they grow in an unprofitable way, and that's the target. Just grow as fast as you can and get as many users as possible. This talk today is more about maximizing revenue while minimizing waste. In other words, maximizing profit. So how do we do that? So there's 3 things we're going to talk about today. So CPA versus CPIA, so cost per acquisition versus cost per incremental acquisition, and the difference in it, why it matters. We're going to go into Facebook and Google attribution and how to think about them, because some of them one channel might over attribute when other channels under attributing, and then just how to think about that. And then as well as incrementality, first analytics, then test design, and then actually execution of that. So this is Jane Goodall, for anybody that doesn't know who this is. She's the gorilla lady. She is one of the instructors of MasterClass. The reason I put her on the slide is because CPA versus CPI is a question of conservation. And it's a question of making sure that you're conserving your spend so that you have it to spend in the right place at future dates. So if we go into CPIA versus CPA, can I get a show of hands here? Who uses CPIA at their company right now? Got it. Small number of people. Who uses CPA? And in other words, like ROAS. Okay, cool. So I just want to make sure everyone understands what this is. It's something that is really important that we all understand. So you can see the green and the red. So if you look at the left side, this is a spend level. And as you increase spend, if you look at your CPA column, you can see your CPA continues to go up. But if we have like an LTV per customer of $250, we would just keep spending and just be like, great, we're just going to keep spending. CPAs are still under that target. We're going to keep spending until our CPA is basically equal to our LTV. The problem with that is that each incremental dollar you spend actually costs more to acquire the next customer. So if you look at CPIA column there, you can see that your your cost per incremental customer keeps going up, and it's going up much faster. And the column I actually really like to just monitor, and we all have to as advertisers, you have to look at total profit or total projected profit, depending on the type of business you're running, to be able to see, is my total projected profit going up or down? And if you see that if you're spending more and your total projected profit's going down, you're most likely at that point where your CPIA is above your LTV. So second piece here, so Google and Facebook attribution. So the reason this is chess is because it's sometimes seems as a chess game, but the reality is they work together really well, and it's about how do we figure out how to use them to the best of our ability to maximize profit. So actually, let me just check here. How many people here are only doing like mobile app install campaigns and only doing like install-based performance marketing rather than web-based using UTM parameters? So how many people are all doing install campaigns or driving to an app? Okay, how many people are not marketing at all? Okay, how many people are doing like the desktop-based advertising where you're sending people to a website? Okay, and a bunch of other people just here for fun. Okay, cool. So what you end up having is, in this chart, what I'm showing here is you have different channels. So channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, that may be Facebook prospecting, Facebook retargeting, YouTube prospecting, YouTube retargeting, Google search. And when you add those up, you end up with a channel reported sum, or so you end up with that channel reported sum, and then you end up with a total actual sum. And what you'll see is that all of the channels added together obviously end up equaling more than the actual total number of acquisition or total number of purchasers or total number of new customers or revenue. And so that creates a problem. There's a Venn diagram of channels overlapping, and we need to understand which ones we need to attribute the value to. So in my time in marketing, I've basically found, like in all the incrementality testing, there's a lot of difference in the strengths and weaknesses for these two platforms. I'm focusing on these two specifically because of the fact that I would guess that most of us are spending 70 to 90% of our spend on these channels. And when I say YouTube, I mean like Google as a platform. And I put YouTube because for us at MasterClass, it's something that we advertise a lot on. I'm sure a lot of you have seen our YouTube ads. So with Facebook, they're great at cross-device attribution, which means they usually over-attribute, and you have to be careful that you're not overspending there. In terms of under-attribute, in terms of where you are in your life cycle as a company, if you're a new company, Facebook actually doesn't do a good job of claiming credit for all the growth. So let's say you're a brand new company and you launch an app and you get 100 installs a day. Then you start spending on Facebook and you're getting now 1,000 installs a day, but Facebook's platform is telling you that you're getting like 600 installs a day. Facebook's driving that additional 300 installs, but they're just not doing a good job of actually claiming that credit for it. And now when you're an older company, you've been around for a while and you're really well known, Facebook will actually be on the other end of the spectrum where they're gonna be over attributing. So when you have very high awareness, it's likely that Facebook's actually over attributing its value. And so doing lift tests can help figure out the value there, but it's actually really hard because you don't know how much, how long you have to pause your spend and keep it off before you actually run tests. Because what happens is when you create these tests in Facebook, the audience that's the holdout has just been they've seen ads until you created that holdout. So let's say you're running ads from January to March and you turn on your lift test on March 1st. Now all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's create this holdout. It doesn't work that great because those people have already seen your ads. So you have to basically be prepared to run a lift test for a long time to really see the value. If we go to YouTube, on the other hand, you have really, really bad cross-device attribution. So the mapping on Facebook's great cross-device, but on YouTube it's horrible. I've seen numbers along the lines of YouTube's reported ROAS or YouTube's reported ROAS ends up showing like 50 or 60% ROAS, when the reality is it might actually be driving 150% ROAS because it's just not doing a good job of attributing the customers properly. And it's due to the fact that like Google, well, there's two main things. When you're in a logged out state on a different device, so if you're not logged into Chrome or you're not logged into Gmail and you switch a device, Google doesn't know that. Facebook usually does because everybody's on Facebook on every single one of their devices. And the other piece is search actually ends up stealing credit from display or from YouTube. So you have to keep that in mind as well. When everyone sees 1,000% return on their search campaigns, that's not an indicator that search is great. It's actually an indicator that likely like YouTube's doing a good job, Facebook's doing a good job. So, and then the last piece here, lift tests are actually, they're only available at higher levels of spend. And unless you get to those higher levels of spend, you don't have the access to be able to actually run these tests. And a lot of them are actually more just like awareness and consideration type tests. They're not actually set up to be conversion based. So it's actually tough to really end up running specific tests with Google or with YouTube. So enter incrementality. So I have Daniel Legrand and Phil Ivey here. These are poker players, if anybody doesn't know. I know there's probably a lot of casino app developers in the room and advertisers, so they probably know who these are. The reason I have these is because incrementality it's an art. It's an art. It's not really a science. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm doing one of these. Yep, that sounds about right. This channel's great. We should spend more on it. But the reality is it's a combination of a lot of different tools that you have to use to narrow in on the directionally what you should be doing by channel. So some of the tools for success that we use are regression analysis, and then how did you hear about us survey. Some people call it the Heidi How. Platform reported data. And you have your then UTM last click data, you have your mobile measurement partner, and then you have match market testing. So I'll just go through all of these right now. So regression analysis, I can't zoom in on this slide. It's hard. I'm sure everyone, there's a handful of people or a lot of people here that have done a regression analysis. The call out here is that you can see the green section. So all I'm doing is saying the dependent variable is the revenue or projected revenue that's coming in based on new customers and how you value your customers on an LTV basis. You can also use revenue if your business is set up to just make revenue on day one and you don't end up having a longevity of a customer. And then in all the other variables, the X variables are all basically your channel spend. And so what you can do is you can actually say, let me just get a quick regression analysis to understand like which channels actually are supposedly producing the most value for me in my advertising. So what we're showing here is that like these channel 1, 2, and 3 are they're showing that they look good. Whereas these other ones are kind of like, yeah, I don't know. We need to like check this and figure out if they're doing anything for us. It's supposed to be a smiley face going like this, but you can't see it because it's a PowerPoint presentation and I didn't check what it looks like because I don't have PowerPoint on my computer. Cool, so then the next step is how did you hear about us? So if you're not using a how did you hear about us survey, I highly recommend it. It is not a science again, but it is helpful to understand directionally where customers actually believe they came from. And so this is a how do you hear about us survey that we use at MasterClass. And what you can see here is all I'm doing is saying, based on what the response percentage is by channel in the how did you hear about us survey, I can then take that response value and add and divide it by, or take the cost of the spend in that channel and figure out what that ROAS is. So I take the number of purchasers from a specific channel, say it's Facebook, multiply it by what we believe the perceived LTV is of that customer and divide it by the cost to get my ROAS for it. And what you can see here is that when you do something like that, you can go, wow, it looks like in November, it looks like this blue channel or this red channel had amazing ROAS. Like for whatever reason, people thought they were coming from this channel number 2. And they're like, wow. So for me as an advertiser, if I see that, I should be saying, do I understand my incrementality properly? Am I spending in the right place? Should I be spending more on channel 2 to drive more volume? And so that's exactly what you see here. We drove more volume on channel number 2. I'm not allowed to say the channels. Our legal team said no, so I had to put channel 1, 2, and 3, and channel 10. So same thing happened here on channel 10. You launch, usually it's a low level of spend, and it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's saying they're coming from this. So it's like, let's increase spend. You see a drop in, how did you hear about us, ROAS, and then, slowly increase spend more, and you see things improve throughout the end of the year. The next step is now let's look at them all together. What is going on? So this is what platform reported is like Facebook, what they report in their platform. Then you have, same thing with Google. And then you have your internal UTM trackers, so what that's reporting. And then you've got what your MMP is reporting. And then you've got your how did you hear about us survey. And then you have your regression analysis that's basically like, this is good, it's providing a lot of value, or I don't know. And so this usually helps give you a directional idea. I can guarantee you if you do this analysis, you'll see some trends in your own data that's showing channel 1 and 2 are great. We need to continue to invest there. Channel 3 and 4 are kind of, maybe a question mark and we need to test more there. So match market testing is specifically designed to get a better idea of what the best mix is of your spend. So in a world where we're all spending on Facebook and YouTube, 90% of our spend, we probably have anywhere between 80 to 90% of that spend's prospecting. The other 10 to 20% is on retargeting. The way I like to think about it, those are 4 channels. You have Google retargeting and Google prospecting. You have Facebook retargeting and Facebook prospecting. And you can break those up into 4 different channels. And the way to set up incrementality testing, I highly recommend everyone go and read. Google's got a great white paper on this. It's called match market testing. The way match market testing works is you take 2 regions or 2 groups of regions or countries, and I'll use countries as an example, that track exactly the same. And instead of saying, let's do a clear A/B test where we go, hey, Facebook, we need you to split the audience into 2 groups. You can actually say, no, we're going to do it at the country level and use these 5 countries over here as the A and these 5 countries over here as B because they track exactly the same throughout the year in terms of their sales volume. And so when you do that, what it allows you to do is some very interesting things. You can test multiple channels at the same time in group A and see how it affects and see how it compares to group B. And B ends up being your control and A ends up being your test group. So the way I recommend doing it is first you have to work with your data science team, find out which countries you should use or find out which cities you should use. In Google's white paper, they use cities in the US. And and then once you have those groups of cities, then you can go and start to set up and design your tests based on which channels you want to test. So the first thing I would recommend is choose cities that don't make up too much spend, because otherwise the company's gonna be like, no, we're not gonna greenlight this initiative, even though it could make a huge difference in your performance and profit. So I usually say 5 to 10% should be the maximum. So if all 10% of your sales comes from Canada and UK, and Canada and UK track perfectly together, make Canada your A group and make the UK your B group. And then what I recommend is you turn off spend for the beginning, and then you do basically level spending. So what this is showing here is the red line is your control region. We're using UK right now. And the blue region is Canada. And so what you do is when you turn off spend, you'll see sales actually stay the same, and they'll go down to a similar base level. And then you'll see notes in here on blue. So the blue section, what we're doing is we're adding in a channel and a spend at that level. And so let's say we add in spend and we do $1,000 and we go, great, when we spent $1,000 on channel A, it gave us this amount of revenue. Okay, great, so now it's double spend. Let's spend $2,000. What did that do to revenue? Now let's spend $4,000. What did that do to revenue? And you have to keep taking these data points and do it for an extended period of time. What you're gonna actually end up doing is developing a curve for that channel for how much you make for each additional dollar you spend. And so once you get to a point where you're like, okay, great, when I spend an additional dollar, it actually looks like I don't make profit. So that means I need to stop increasing spend and go back to the last level I was at where the profit was maximized. And then what you do at that point is you can add in your next channel. Let me go back. You can add in your next channel and do the same thing. And once you get to the point where you're like, okay, I know that spending 5K on this channel and 10K on this channel look great, you should actually then go back and see if you can increase the second channel further while decreasing the first channel. And this is the simplest way to do it, to create what this system is your CPIA versus LTV. So this is the assumption that LTV is just one value. Everyone thinks you can increase your LTV over time. That's great. I would argue you should just set that then and say this is my LTV value. But your target here is that your CPIA curve is your cost per incremental activation is going to keep going up as you spend more and more. So you want to stop spending when you hit that point at which your CPIA ends up being LTV. The easiest way to do this in practice is to actually just constantly be monitoring your total profit. If you're not watching your total profit, which that is your LTV, your projected profit, so your LTV minus your spend, then you're not doing your company a service of making sure you're maximizing sales. So that's it. I think I have, thank you. Yeah.